The luncheon. Luncheon means a formal lunch. William Somerset Maugham, 1874 to 1965, was a distinguished British playwright, novelist, and short story writer. Novelist is a writer of novels. He was among the most popular writers of his era and reputedly the highest paid author during the 1930s. His work is characterized by a clear, unadorned style, cosmopolitan settings, and a shrewd understanding of human nature. Unadorned means simple and straightforward. Cosmopolitan means familiar with many countries. Shrewd means sharp power of judging or acute. A most delightfully humorous narrative, The Luncheon, is a slice of life story about Maugham's luncheon date proposed to him by a woman whom he hopes is a supporter of his art. Delightfully means cheerily. Humorous means funny. I caught sight of her at the play, and in answer to her call, I went over during the interval and sat down beside her. It was long since I had last seen her, and if someone had not mentioned her name, I hardly think I would have recognized her. She addressed me brightly. "Well, it's been many years since we first met. How time does fly. We're none of us getting any younger. Do you remember the first time I saw you? You asked me to luncheon." Did I remember? It was 20 years ago, and I was living in Paris. I had a tiny apartment, and I was earning barely enough money. Barely means just. She had read a book of mine and had written to me about it. I answered, thanking her, and presently I received from her another letter saying she was passing through Paris and would like to have a chat with me. But her time was limited, and the only free moment she had was on the following Thursday, and would I give her a little luncheon at Foyot's afterwards? Foyot's is a restaurant, and it was so far beyond my means that I had never even thought of going there. Beyond my means out of my capacity. I had 80 francs, that is gold francs, to last me the rest of the month, and a modest luncheon should not cost more than 15. Modest means moderate or limited. If I cut out coffee for the next 2 weeks, I could manage well enough. I answered that I would meet my friend at Foyot's on Thursday at 12:30. She was, in appearance, imposing rather than attractive, and she gave me the impression of having more teeth, white and large, and even than were necessary for any practical purpose. In appearance means arrived. Imposing means impressive. She was talkative, but since she seemed to want to talk about me, I was prepared to be an attentive listener. I was startled when the menu was brought, for the prices were a great deal higher than I had thought. But she reassured me. Startled means to feel sudden shock. Reassured means put someone at ease. "I never eat anything for luncheon," she said. "Oh, don't say that," I answered generously. Generously means big-heartedly. "I never eat more than one thing. I think people eat far too much nowadays. A little fish, perhaps. I wonder if they have any salmon." Salmon is a type of an expensive fish. Well, it was early in the year for salmon, and it was not in the menu. But I asked the waiter if there was any. Yes, a beautiful salmon had just come in. It was the first they had had. I ordered it for my guest. The waiter asked her if she would have something while it was being cooked. "No," she answered. "I never eat more than one thing. Unless you have a little caviar. I never mind caviar. Caviar are eggs of sturgeon type of fish. I knew I could not afford caviar, but I could not very well tell her that. For myself, I chose the cheapest dish on the menu, and that was a mutton chop. I think you're unwise to eat meat, she said. I don't believe in overloading my stomach. Unwise means foolish. Overloading means overeating. She ate the caviar and she ate the salmon. She talked gaily of art and literature and music. But I wondered what the bill would come to. When my mutton chop arrived, she took me quite seriously to task. Gaily means cheerfully. Task means job. I see that you're in the habit of eating a heavy luncheon. I'm sure it's a mistake. Why don't you follow my example and just eat one thing? I couldn't possibly eat anything more unless they had some of those giant asparagus. Giant means very big. Asparagus means shoots of cultivated lily plant. I should be sorry to leave Paris without having some of them. My heart sank. I had seen them in the shops, and I knew that they were horribly expensive. My mouth had often watered at the sight of them. I'm not in the least hungry, my guest sighed. But if you insist, I don't mind having some asparagus. I ordered them. Sighed means deep breath out, expressing sadness. Aren't you going to have any? No, I never eat asparagus. We waited for the asparagus to be cooked. Panic seized me. Panic seized me means to take possession or control. It was not a question now of how much money I should have left over for the rest of the month, but whether I had enough to pay the bill. It would be mortifying to find myself 10 francs short and be obliged to borrow from my guest. Mortifying means embarrassed or ashamed. Obliged means compulsorily. I knew exactly how much I had, and if the bill came to more, I made up my mind that I would put my hand in my pocket and with a dramatic cry start up and say it had been picked. Picked means stolen. Of course, it would be awkward if she had not money enough either to pay the bill. Awkward means difficult or inconvenient. Then the only thing would be to leave my watch and say I would come back and pay later. The asparagus appeared. I watched her thrust them down her throat in large mouthfuls. At last she finished. Mouthfuls means bites. Coffee? I said. Yes, just an ice cream and coffee, she answered. I was past caring now. So I ordered coffee for myself and an ice cream and coffee for her. You know, there's one thing I thoroughly believe in, she said as she ate the ice cream. One should always get up from a meal feeling one could eat a little more. Are you still hungry? I asked faintly. Oh no, I'm not hungry. You see, I don't eat luncheon. I have a cup of coffee in the morning and then dinner. But I never eat more than one thing for luncheon. I was speaking for you. Oh, I see. Then a terrible thing happened. While we were waiting for the coffee, the head waiter came up to us bearing a large basket full of huge peaches. But surely peaches were not in season then. Lord knew what they cost. I knew a little later, for my guest going on with a conversation absent-mindedly took one. Absent-mindedly means inattentively. You see, you filled your stomach with a lot of meat, my one miserable little chop, and you can't eat anymore. Miserable means unhappy. But I've just had a snack and I shall enjoy a peach. The bill came, and when I paid it, I found that I had only enough for a quite inadequate tip. Inadequate means insufficient. Her eyes rested for an instant on the 3 francs I left for the waiter, and I knew that she thought me mean. But when I walked out of the restaurant, I had the whole month before me and not a penny in my pocket. "Follow my example," she said as we shook hands, "and never eat more than one thing for luncheon." "I'll do better than that," I retorted. "I'll eat nothing for dinner tonight." Retorted is a sharp answer. "Humorist!" she cried gaily, jumping into a cab. "You're quite a humorist." Humorist means comedian. But I have had my revenge at last. I do not believe that I am a vindictive man, but when the gods take a hand in the matter, it is understandable to observe the result with satisfaction. Vindictive means showing strong desire for revenge. Today she weighs 21 stone.
Factual question. 1. What is the profession of the narrator? Answer. Author is a writer. 2. When was the lady free? The lady was free only on Thursday. 3. Where and when did they decide to have luncheon? The lady wanted to have luncheon at Foyot's on Thursday. It was an expensive restaurant which the narrator could not afford, but the writer still agreed. 4. What do you think the woman reassured the narrator about? The woman reassured the narrator that she never eats anything for luncheon. 5. I never eat anything for luncheon. Explain the irony in this line. The narrator's friend says that she never eats anything at luncheon before going to the expensive restaurant Foyot's. But after getting there, she proceeds to order salmon, caviar, asparagus, ice cream, coffee and a peach. This is ironic as she eats twice as much food as a normal person would. 6. What does the use of the word sank suggest about the narrator's feelings? The use of the word sank suggests that the narrator was disappointed. 7. I was past caring now. In your view, explain why the narrator feels this way. After making the narrator believe that she wasn't going to eat anything, his lady friend ordered all the most expensive dishes available on the menu. She even advised him not to have a heavy meal when she had eaten enough for 2 people herself. At this point, the narrator had given up hope to have any money left at the end of the meal, so he ordered coffee for himself too. He says, I was past caring now to show this new careless attitude he had about money. 8. Then a terrible thing happened. Describe the narrator's emotion at this point in the story. Why does he express this emotion? The narrator was in a confused state of mind. He had somewhat made a mental calculation of the amount he would need to pay, which was in any case way over his budget, and then the waiter came with a basket of huge peaches. His friend took one and started eating it. He thus came to know how expensive they were when the bill arrived. There was also panic since he was trying to frame out if he had enough money to pay the bill. 9. How many things did the guest eat in all? The guest ate a salmon dish, caviar and some asparagus, along with champagne and a peach and coffee with ice cream as dessert.